Wisconsin's nearly 40-year-old land conservation program is facing a grim future. The Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program will end in June if funding runs out, and lawmakers in Madison can't seem to come to a consensus on what the program should look like. In the last state budget, the governor wanted to invest $1 billion to the program over the next 10 years, but that was stripped out. In January, Assembly Republicans passed a bill that would extend the program, but without funding for land acquisition. Then last month, the Senate failed to take a vote on legislation, sending it back to committee. To talk about the future of the program, I sat down with Charlie Carlin with Gathering Waters, Wisconsin's Alliance for Land Trusts, and an advocate for the program. Here he is explaining what the stewardship program does.
Simply put, Knowles-Nelson is Wisconsin's flagship environmental conservation program. It provides funds to acquire conservation land, neighborhood parks, bike trails, things like that. And then it provides money to build all the stuff that we need to get out and enjoy all the places that make Wisconsin special. So if you need to pave that bike path, you need to have a campground to stay at when you go to the state park, a boat launch to launch your boat to go fishing. All of that is paid for through the stewardship program.
So this has historically been a bipartisan success story. That's how it was created, in a bipartisan nature. We are not necessarily seeing that today. What's the holdup here in your eyes for lawmakers?
Well, so I think there's an important distinction to make. According to Wisconsin voters, this is still a bipartisan success story. The story changes, however, when you get inside the state capitol. That is the one place in Wisconsin where it is a partisan issue, and that's where we really see, especially legislative leaders, kind of getting sideways with what voters want to happen.
The bill that's making its way, or I should say that kind of has stopped making its way through the legislature right now, which would, and this is kind of an oversimplification, extend the program, but it would not include the same kind of funding for land acquisition. Is that legislation something you could be in favor of?
No. That is simply Knowles-Nelson in name only. What passed out of the Assembly has some money for facilities maintenance, and that's important, but essentially no money to acquire conservation lands. Without being able to purchase land, it's simply not the stewardship program.
Is it better than nothing if funding runs out by the end of June?
I don't know that nothing is better than nothing, you know? So we are facing a funding deadline where we're going to likely, at this point, going to have a gap in funding. I think our real concern would be that if a bill went through, it was labeled the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program, but it doesn't actually do what Knowles-Nelson is supposed to do, that would really mislead voters.
What would you need in this legislation to be able to support it?
Yeah, it's really simple. Adequate funding for land acquisition as well as property development, and then removing what we call sort of the poison pills in the legislation that got stalled in the Senate. And all that is referring to is they included a line that would effectively ban land acquisition in many communities in the state. So it would no longer really be a statewide program. We'd like to see that removed, and then great, we can move forward.
If no agreement happens by June, what happens then?
So what happens is there's simply no money to give out for grant awards. The program itself doesn't go away. The staff positions at the Department of Natural Resources that administer it, they're all funded through the budget that was approved. So what that means is we all get back to work and we try and get this funded in the 2027 state budget.
What would it look like for visitors of Wisconsin's outdoors? Would they notice any difference in the lapse of funding?
So I don't know that a tourist coming up from Chicago for the weekend is going to notice a difference right away, but I think what we're already seeing is the accrual of just putting things off over and over again. So a quick example, we have a $1 billion maintenance backlog at our state parks. That is money that would be used to fix bathrooms, make sure the water fountains work, that the playground equipment is safe, the trails are maintained. And if we're not making any of those investments, that backlog just simply gets worse.
And I just kind of want to wrap up our conversation, which is, you know, obviously I think we're going to have a really hard time getting anything done this session, but in an ideal world, what would that look like for you?
So the one place where we do see negotiations still ongoing is about tax cuts. And so Robin Vos and Governor Evers are in active conversation about whether to do an additional tax cut. That is an opportunity for other priorities to get one last consideration as well. We've heard Governor Evers say he would like Knowles Nelson to be part of that conversation, and we would certainly support that kind of last-minute compromise.
Have you talked to the governor about what that could look like in that proposal?
We're in regular conversation with the governor's staff, and really what we're asking for echoes the governor's previous statements to the legislature, where he specifically said he would be happy to sign any reauthorization proposal that included adequate funding for both land acquisition and management. That's the position that we support. Doesn't have to be his $100 million from the budget, but just a little something towards the middle.
So those specifics still being worked out currently?
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation.
Here's a look at the impact of Knowles Nelson grants across Wisconsin. Now, for example, in Dane County, there are 504 projects with more than $77 million invested. And in Sauk County, there are 474 projects with $50 million invested. You can hear about a Democrat's proposal to fund the program in our full conversation up now on channel3000.com.